Scott is recognized from South Carolina for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Brown, for my 10 minutes. I appreciate that very much. Noting that Senator Menendez used so much time, I appreciate the new standard, and I will take advantage of that. Thank you so much, Chairman, for allowing that, and Senator Menendez for setting the standard. I say that with tongue in cheek, of course. One of the things I'd say is that, I was saying it prematurely earlier, that Republicans and Democrats both agreed that we should find a way to make the American dream more attainable and more achievable for the average person in this nation, no matter the color of their skin. That is something that we should all celebrate, and frankly, we should all believe. I'm not completely convinced that others believe that as much as I do, but it certainly is the case that we want Americans to achieve the American dream, and nothing speaks of the American dream, in my opinion, more than home ownership. As a kid who grew up really in apartments and in family members' homes, the thought of having my mother own her own home and have a garage attached to her home that she's able to drive into and to be safe as she gets out the car, as opposed to just having an apartment complex where she has to be very, very careful when she's getting out of the car from after a 16-hour shift or an 8-hour shift that ends at 11 p.m. is part of the reason why this issue is so incredibly important to me personally, and why I, like so many other Americans, millions of Americans, dreamt of home ownership as a way of not really creating equity in America, but simply of having a safer, healthier environment for my mother to come home to. And as we have this conversation, I hope we don't overlook the fact that we are all striving to accomplish something that is sustainable. Senator Menendez said it well, that we have to have responsible decisions made around home ownership. And I think we can actually increase the number of people eligible for home ownership in a responsible manner by including within the scoring models that we use for credit worthiness those folks who are paying rent on time. And so many of the models looked at by the GSEs, they don't consider things that are simple. Thankfully, we passed legislation, my legislation, the Credit Score Competition Act, that allows for these credit agencies to look at whether you're paying your utility on time, whether you're paying your phone bill on time, whether or not you're paying your rent on time. Those are three strong indicators that we should use to increase the number of people in this nation, and specifically minorities in this nation, who are already credit worthy. But we're not using the information. That's wrong. We should change the model so that those who are credit worthy have a chance to be a homeowner. It's that simple. And I'd ask Mr. Peter and Ms. Rice, am I missing something on that specific point? And knowing Chairman Brown will not give me 7 more minutes, I'd ask you to have short answers so that I can get to my next question.
No, you're absolutely right, Senator Scott. It's one of the reasons why the National Fair Housing Alliance started our Tech Equity Initiative to de-bias all of the technologies that are used in the housing and financial services space. 30 plus years ago, and I'm telling my age, when I was a loan underwriter, the 2 most critical pieces of information that I looked at to determine whether or not a consumer was credit worthy and could pay their mortgage obligation was, what is your current housing payment? How well do you pay your rent? And what is your housing payment shock? And if those 2 things were on point, my job was 80% done.
Awesome.
But do you know, Senator Scott, we do not consider those 2 key factors today in the underwriting process, as you just said. And the reason is there's no infrastructure to collect that information, and we need to build that, and the GSEs could go a long way to doing that.
Thank you. Mr. Peter, can you give me a quick answer to that question so I can get to my last one?
Yes, thank you, Senator. So fundamentally, the problem in the housing market today is that we have a supply shortage. And this supply shortage, in combination with federal housing policies, which tend to stimulate demand, only ends up driving prices higher and higher. Currently, we have 10 to 15% home price appreciation. This has been going on for a year. If this goes on for another year or 2 more years, it's going to be pricing many.
Peter, let me ask you a more specific question. If we use more variables in understanding someone's credit worthiness, would we see an increase in access to the American dream called home ownership?
I mean, Senator, we can expand the base. However, if we don't have more houses available,
that's a different conversation. So the answer to the question is yes or no.
Sure. Yes.
Okay, so there's no question. If you live in Charleston, South Carolina, there's no doubt about it. We have more buyers in the market than we have sellers. We have a real problem with capacity. I understand that. The point of my question was whether or not if we started looking at the entire financial picture of a borrower, would more borrowers be credit worthy than the ones that do exclude your rent, your electric bill? And I think that answer is pretty clear. And knowing that my time is up, I'm going to, until Chairman Brown cuts me off, make a statement as opposed to asking another question. Because my thought is that Senator Menendez made a really good point, which is that if you look at the average net worth of a household that owns a home, it's about $255. One that rents is about $6,300. We should certainly bridge that gap. That should be part of what we do as members of the Senate and Congress, is to look at ways for us to close the chasm in the most responsible way. I oftentimes walk into hearings and asking myself, based on the title of the hearing, am I in the same place as my friends on the other side? And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. I would suggest that we focus on the problem, and even if we come to solutions from different pathways, that we don't demonize folks who disagree with your approach to solving a problem. I actually think that making the borrower who's already creditworthy a focus of my attention actually will increase homeownership in the minority community faster than other ways. I think if we can address the assessment issues, which are more a county issue than it is a national issue on the county level. Having been a chairman of a county council, understanding the 5-year rotations for assessments, certainly if your property values increase faster in your more affluent communities, but you don't have assessments but every 5 years, that's like common sense. The challenge is that is not specifically aimed at any race of people. That is something that we should pass down to the states and to the local level. We should spend our time in this area and focusing our attention as much as possible on those issues that we should control, not that we can control, but that we should control from the federal level. Thank you so much for the extra 2 minutes and 12 seconds. I know that it hurt your heart, but it warmed mine, Senator. Thank you, Chairman Brown.
Senator Scott. Senator Warner is from Virginia.